There's your recoil. When you pull a recoil, it should have this arm that comes out, and that's what grabs this. So you can see there when you pull on it at all, that arm will pop out, and then when you let off of it, it'll suck it back in. So make sure you've got good tension there. Make sure that arm comes in and out freely. You can pull this cup there, that's called a recoil pull starter cup. The 14 millimeter, I like to make sure this doesn't spin in there. And then this cup just pulls right out. It's also got a woodruff key, keeps it lined up on the crank so it doesn't spin out of there. And it's a small key there. Make sure we don't lose that. It's very, very small. Sits right on there. Next, we're going to pull that stator cover. And here's your reverse line here. We've already taken the bolt off of this. That reverse actually comes in from the other side. We'll remove it with a wrench from the other side, or we'll just pull it after we pull our stator here. So we've got 8 millimeter bits. Okay, and like I said earlier, we did a couple videos on valve adjustments on this model, so take a look at those. And these, it's kind of hard for me to see here, so I'm not blocking the view. It looks like we got all those out around that stator cover. These are sometimes a little bit of a challenge. They've got a magnetic pull on them, which creates the charge. So the stator is what's got all these wires coming out of there, and then there's also a couple sensors, I guess. But we'll try a rubber mallet here. A lot of times once you get it started there, it'll come off fairly easily, but the gasket, you gotta kind of break that free to start. So now we've got this cover loose. We'll pull that off. There's our stator there, our stator assembly, and then our wires that come out. Here's our pulsar here. Here's our reverse line. Since we have the 8 millimeter on our impact, we'll go ahead and buzz this line off of there, that cable. And there is your reverse cable. There's your stator. Now we're going to pull this flywheel. We've got a bearing. A lot of times this happens, pretty common for these bearings to stay on this shaft here rather than inside the case with the stator. Here's our idler gear. So our starter comes in here, runs on this gear here. Here's our idler gear part of it that runs onto the back, our starter gear, kind of our starter clutch is what a lot of companies call it. We've got a puller here. Got a couple different sizes, so I got to figure out which one it is. You can get these from Motion Pro or K&L. Tusk makes a couple sizes. Several other tool manufacturers. Spin this on there. So what happens here is you spin this onto the flywheel. You can see there's threads in here, and then you take and run this down. And that you run that down onto the crankshaft. So you want to make sure this is completely seated before you start doing this. So turn that all the way down there. Tighten it up. You want to make sure this is backed out completely as far as you need it to so that you can seat that 100% down there. And you put a socket on there, the right size. This case it's the 19. Again, you want to keep this motor from spinning over. If you let this motor spin over, a lot of times what will happen is this cam chain will bind down in there and it'll break the engine case. And then that just pulls it right off of there. Sometimes if there's a whole lot of pressure on there, a whole lot of tension, you can't get this off. A lot of times what I'll do is run that down in there till my impact driver can't go anymore, and I'll take a hammer and just tap it one time on here. A lot of times that just bounces right off of there. Then we'll just remove this. Here's our starter clutch gear there. And then when I get this flywheel puller off, I'll show you the starter clutch on the other side of this flywheel. So these go one way, and this gear will sit on there. That'll spin one way, but it won't spin the other. So that's the starter clutch.